We're back now with the latest on the double murder trial of Alex Murdaugh. South Carolina prosecutors rested their case on Friday after calling dozens of witnesses over the last 4 weeks.
Now it's the defense's turn to prove that the 54-year-old did not fatally shoot his wife and son in 2021.
For the latest, we are joined by NBC News legal analyst Danny Cevallos. Danny, good morning. So court resumes tomorrow after the holiday today. Let's get everyone caught up to speed here, and you've made an honest assessment of the prosecution's case over the last few weeks. Where did they do well? Where were they maybe lacking a little bit?
If you'd asked me earlier last week, I would have told you that the prosecution was doing well, but the defense was scoring some points. I think things changed dramatically on Friday when the prosecution introduced this late found evidence of vehicle location, this data that was provided to the prosecution, which really in many ways puts the lie, number one, to Murdaugh's alibi, but also it goes further in not only placing him at the crime scene, but even on a lone country road where apparently his wife's cell phone was found. They tracked it going about 40 miles an hour. Then he speeds up, implying, I think, that he slowed down to toss it out of the car. Again, this is all circumstantial evidence that ultimately really only proves two things, rather. Number one, that Murdaugh was there, and number two, that it's inconsistent with what he told police, which I go back to my common refrain, which is a lot of this case is made out by Murdaugh's own words used against him.
And Danny, they have that strong evidence, but where have they not made such a compelling argument?
Well, you could say that they don't have any direct evidence. They don't have an eyewitness, but that's a pretty common problem in murder cases because the one eyewitness is no longer with us. So you might make that argument. Look for the defense one way or another when they get back on Tuesday. Are they going to open with a third-party theory? In other words, are they going to point to an empty chair and say, as we say in the business, some other dude did it? SODI is the acronym. But are they going to develop that defense, or are they just going to sit back and say, well, there may be some evidence here, but they haven't proven it beyond a reasonable doubt, the highest standard that we have in the law. If they do that, that typically means you don't have a lot of other options as a defense.
SODI. All right. I didn't know that one before. So, I mean, the defense that called its first two witnesses on Friday, including the county coroner. Now we look ahead and see maybe a week of arguments, I think, is what we're thinking. What do you think is the key thing the defense needs to do moving forward? Because really all they need is one juror, right, to say, yeah, I don't believe this.
Exactly right. So we already know the state is going to put together a very comprehensive timeline. Expect a lot of demonstrative exhibits in the state's closing, pinpointing where Murdaugh was and where he said he was, and showing the inconsistency. The defense has to go on the aggressive with the problems in the state's investigation, which you commonly do. You chip away at what they could have done, what they should have done. Did they focus in on one suspect early on and ignore all the other suspects? Expect some of that argument. But I'm really looking this week to see one way or another, are they going to point the finger at anyone else? Do they have anyone else to point the finger at? Because so far, the only evidence was the only other person other than the victims at that property at that time apparently was Murdaugh.
Of course, the odds of Murdaugh testifying are like...
Can you take your finger and make it closer to your thumb?
Like
they're very small, but there's always a chance because a defendant has the constitutional absolute right to ignore his lawyers, as they often do, and do what they think is best, which is how they got in that chair to begin with. But they have the privilege to take that stand if they want to. Statistically, most don't.
All right, Danny, thank you so much.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.